Hold on. There we go. Good morning. You have to get the mic engaged. And I am Robert Phoenix. Welcome to another edition of the Astro Weather. And I am on time today. How about that? I am on time. So I hope everybody is having what I say, meaningful morning, a meaningful morning. And it's another day to be grateful that you are alive. And I know that conditions in our world seem to be rapidly degrading and declining, but I've been spending a lot of time in the hospital over the last week, and I can tell you that it's better out here than it is in there, right? And I know that we all have things in our lives like aches and pains and uh, things that we all go through in order to stay in the game, but trust me, it's better out here than it is in there. And if there's something you can be grateful for today, something that you just take for granted, it's your health. It is your health. We just take it for granted that and again, as we get older and we evolve, sometimes our physical abilities decline. I mean, that's normal, right? But if you're not there, you're good. You're in the game, right? And I think that's part of being here is being in the game and being able to continue to define yourself and what you're capable of and purpose and meaning. Like these are all really important tools and or just not even tools, just important perspectives that can be very important. I just use the word important twice. They're I think they can be vital just to step back and remind yourself that you're here, right? You're here. You're in this realm, whether you call it a simulation, whether you call it a fallen archonic world, whether you call it a creation of God, right? Whatever you want to label your experience here, you're here now. And trust me, it's a lot better to be here now than to be in a bed in a hospital somewhere. And it's not just because that's where my mother is. I walk past rooms as I go to her room, and these doors are open, and you see the people there, and uh, you know, by and large, are not real happy to be there, right? So it's a little something. It's a little kind of Piscean uh, hope, little Piscean hope to hang your hat on today, and a reminder that this is just a better place to be, no matter how difficult it is. All right. Let's see. Why don't we get into the weather? Let's get into the weather. Okay. Let's see what we got here. That's about right. That's about right. It's, it's always funny when people ask me what I do here in Texas. It's always funny. What do you, sir? What do you do? I always have to size them up, and generally, my most generic reply is, "I'm kind of like a life coach, and I do a little writing." Oh, really? Yeah, yeah, that's what I do. It's like Texas is funny that way. All right, let's get into it. Here we go. Here we go, boys and girls. That moon and Leo. I was feeling it yesterday. I gotta say, I was feeling it. I was definitely feeling it. I felt actually felt good yesterday, but maybe a little too good in some ways. But no, so here we go. The moon is coming in, and we got this T square right at the beginning of the day. And again, if you're in another part of the world, you're still dealing with it. And this is a fixed T square. And well, I kind of got into it a little bit last night on Twitter, and I was kind of going back and forth with this person, which I probably shouldn't have done. right? I shouldn't have done, but when this is the downside with the moon in Leo. Like you don't want to lose. You just don't want to lose. So this is where we're emotionally invested, and the word ego comes into play. And I'm like, okay, am I going a little overboard here? Do I need to check my ego a little bit? At the end of the night, I thought to myself, you know what? I just need to keep my eye on this. So I would say keep your eye on it. Keep your eye. Now, for me, the moon is in the ninth house in my chart. So I'm dealing with things like, concepts and philosophies and all that other stuff. So that's kind of where it was getting played out. But this is an area that I would definitely be mindful of. When we get into this fixed T square, uh, there's a chance here, even with the square with Jupiter, that everything gets blown up, right? One thing becomes much bigger. And there's I don't know if you guys have watched the Chappelle show, but he used to have this kind of ongoing skit called "When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong." This is kind of one of those days when keeping it real goes wrong. And if you keep doubling down on keeping it real, it may not be in your best interest. I am just saying. Like, this is one of those days where if you keep doubling down and tripling down, you will have an ego check. This is in the winds today. So how can you deal with this T square in a way that is meaningful? Well, you can deal with it by understanding and recognizing that you have an emotional investment in something, and you have to figure out how much that's worth to you if you double down and triple down, and the next thing you know, you're like, sounding a bit like a fool, right? Like maybe as you see things escalate, you pump the brakes. If you want to do this, I mean, you don't have to, but if you see things escalate, you can pump the brakes and say, you know what, I got to find a way to get out of this and tap out. So this we talked about saving face before. This is about you saving face, not about other people. It's about you saving face for yourself. And I highly recommend that. Look, it's important for you to stand up for your values because we live in a world where they're just being steamrolled and destroyed. So people have to, on some level, be standard bearers for values. Standard bearers for morals, standard bearers for the things that make the world work. Like if we don't have those things on an individual level, everything falls apart because it's clear that the institutions, whatever kind of buy-in they had, they've abandoned those things. They've left the building, right? So who does it come down to? It comes down to us. So we have to demonstrate this on a daily basis. And sometimes it can be very tiring, especially when you're dealing with a world that doesn't seem to be as invested. So this is what I'm talking about. But again, like how far do you want to go? How real do you want to keep it? And I think we all have our little meter. And I was going into the red last night. I'm like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this little Twitter dust up? Which I eventually did. But this is a good auger today for kind of testing what you're capable of being emotionally invested in, but not to the point where it's going to completely defeat your emotional investment. Because what's going to happen is that this moon is going to go into Virgo. So we're going to go into a full moon situation over the weekend. And what happens with the full moon in Virgo, or just the moon in Virgo in general? It's a very judgmental and critical moon, right? So coming off of this Leo moon, especially with this T square, if for whatever reason, right, you get involved in something where there's too much hubris or too much pride or fill in that blank, right? You're going to have plenty of time to be circumspect and possibly even very critical, or maybe at the receiving end of criticism with that moon in Virgo. And we have Black Moon Lilith here too in Virgo as well. So we're gonna get this full moon in Black Moon Lilith in Virgo. I can tell you right now how that's gonna play out on the stage, social stage, the medical world, with things going on from the hijack, right? Which we know what the hijack or the carjack is. We know the carjack, and the evidence is clearly in. How much more evidence is needed to be amassed when we see the damage done by the carjack? And here comes this moon right here, this full moon. And Virgo, when we talk about Virgo, when we talk about health, and Black Moon Lilith is the dark side of it all. The dark side of the health condition in this world and in this country. And this full moon in Virgo illuminates it. And what are we dealing with Pisces? Hospitals, sanitariums, those 12th house institutions. But we're just going to go hospital. There's Saturn right there. H for hospital. So this could be a very damning moment for what was going on during that time, the care or the lack of care. And again, I have to say that that's not been my experience with my mother and her current hospital stay. These people have been, I would say, for the most part, just outstanding. Like, I just can't imagine having to go in and clean up somebody's bed and their butt and everything after they've, not been able to take care of their bowel movement. I just, you know, not my pay grade, right? And so these people, they do it, and they do it with a smile, and they do it. It's just amazing when I see some of these people, and the positive side of that world. Anyway, so be aware, right? Be aware of what you are emotionally investing in and anchoring in, because you don't really, because what happens after this Leo moon is, like I said, it's put under the spotlight of this Virgo moon. And God, you don't really want to live with the excoriating illumination of the Virgo moon. And especially with Lilith here, you don't want to do that, right? So the plus side of this would be, well, how can I be of service? Yeah, for me, the Virgo moon is the moon that throws itself into, especially the full moon, throws itself into a situation where this just has to be done. There's just no two ways about it. And if I don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. It has that energy, right? And over here, with such a strong presence in Pisces, and there's almost like a commandment in some ways with this. It's going to be a very interesting Virgo moon weekend. I can tell you that right now. Very interesting Virgo moon weekend. And Juno is here too, right? So we're going to have the moon come in and conjunct Juno, which is about new potential, new possibility. So if you wanted to get into a new, and a lot of times they'll say, well, it's the new moon that brings you the opportunity to plant new seeds and have new starts. I think that this full moon conjunct Juno is actually a really good opportunity, because it looks at, like, where are you falling short with your health goals? Where are you falling short with your ability to maintain a daily discipline when it comes to health? And I've kind of been going through that in my own life. I've been watching these carnivore videos on YouTube. I'm like, my God, these people are becoming superhuman just by eating meat. And so it's got me thinking again about my health. And I've been doing my best to go to the gym and try to stay in that wave. But this is a really clear opportunity with this full moon on Juno to look at, hey, I can make some changes to my life. I can improve my routine. I can improve what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And I think that's a really positive manifestation of this upcoming full moon. Also, we get these trines with Jupiter and Uranus, so they can happen quickly. The beautiful thing is that when you're doing your best to be conscious and aware, and you run up against something that you've done and you haven't done it maybe in the best way you could have, or you have uh, to some degree erred, right? We all err. This would be one of those transits where you can recognize it quickly and then move on. The moon here in Virgo is mutable, right? So you can be adaptable here, and the trine with Uranus means it can happen very, very quickly. And I think this is one of the things um, that really gets us tripped up as humans, is that when we do make a mistake or we do get involved in some degree of suffering, whether that's valid or maybe, to, I don't want to use the word invalid, but questionable, we tend to stay in those moments too long, right? We tend to um, miss the opportunity to process them and then move on. The flip side of that is that some people never really see it. They just sort of, brush over their tracks and then they just keep going, which isn't really that effective either. Right. So the idea here is that when you do err, and again, if you want to pull in the Christian perspective, which would be Pisces over here, it would be very conscious, like, God, I fucked up. Help me make sure that I don't do this again, right? Or thank you for showing me this so I don't have to go through it again. And when the opportunity comes up, I can do something different. That is living consciously. That is living with awareness. And you don't want to spend a lot of time, fuck up. You just don't. And sometimes it's hard because, depending on the scale of the fuck up, whether it's real or perceived, right? If the scale is big, you got to live with it for a little while. Like you have to take the L for a while, but then it's important to be able to move on. And I think recognizing it, and if it's not too egregious, we all have these things that have happened to us, and then we deal with our conscience, right? And our conscience says, "Man, you really fucked up. You really fucked up," and you got to live with it for a little bit. But do your best to assimilate it, own it, and then move on, right? And this is one of those weekends coming up where you can do that. You can do that with the mutability, and with Uranus, it's fast. It's really fast. And with Jupiter, I think there is this kind of beneficence with Jupiter, right? It sort of softens the harshness of the Virgo moon. I think it's one of the toughest moons in astrology. The Virgo moon is a tough moon. I'm trying to think of any other moon that would be as tough as the Virgo moon. Maybe the Capricorn moon, but with the Capricorn moon, the individual ultimately, learns that if they accept and embrace the emotional conditions in their life, right, they can somehow master them, even if they don't have as much kind of emotional throughput as they could. It's like the Capricorn moon kind of gets on top. The Virgo moon doesn't get on top, right? It's one of those moons that is just merciless in some ways. And if you have a Virgo moon in your chart, God bless you, you probably had a very demanding mother. A very I managed both my parents have Virgo moons, which is not unusual. Right? They hatched a Virgo barely, but my mother was born on a Virgo full moon, and my father was born on a Virgo new moon, just after. He's a Leo, so it's the moon right after Leo, but still pretty new, right? So I grew up in a Virgo moon household, and I watched people who were so incredibly hard on themselves, and a lot of it had to do also with their mothers, demanding mothers, both sides of the ledger sheet. So all you people out there with Virgo moons, take time out to forgive your mothers, forgive yourself, and you know, do something, especially this weekend. If you have a Virgo moon, it's going to bring out the tendencies of your Virgo moon. On the other side of the ledger sheet, if you've got a Pisces moon and you're dealing with this Virgo full moon, that can be a real shocker as well. The Pisces moon just wants to, be blissed out and stay in kind of I don't know. I would call it ecstatic, and I don't want to say a slumber, but the Pisces moon wants to, live the dream, right? Wants to live the dream, which can be a beautiful dream, or an artistic dream, or a Gothic dream, right? The Pisces moon is living in the dream, and the Virgo moon is here. Here's the fucking cold water on your face. Wake up, right? So people who have, and even Pisces in general, like the Virgo full moon for a Pisces individual, around the degrees of the full moon can be very challenging. And you could receive a lot of external criticism for you and your life and how you're living your life. Right. So that's just how astrology works, in terms of these angular relationships. And things are getting very serious here, right? Can you kind of feel the tension mounting? Things are getting very serious as the sun moves closer to Saturn. It's really weird. I was again starting to see all these kind of feeds and stories that William is the Antichrist, right? Like that's kind of coming in. That's kind of coming up now. Prince Charles, he's fading to gray, and then there's William, right? Then there's William, who is set to take the throne, and not just the throne, but potentially the leadership of the Holy Roman Empire, right? That's what the Antichrist is supposed to be about. So we have this Sun Saturn conjunction coming in here, and things are getting. I don't know why I went off in that Prince William tangent, but it just there's something about this Sun Saturn conjunction that it's very serious. I don't think we can understate how serious of a time we're living in right now. I've been tracking a lot of these billionaires who've been pulling out their money, right? We could go right in here with Venus and Mars, and then Pluto squaring Jupiter, right, and squaring Uranus. And a lot, Jeff Bezos just sold a shit ton of his stock, a lot of his stock. I think Zuckerberg is, kind of in the same boat. There are people that are pulling their money out of New York City. These are canaries in the coal mine, right? And when we look at some of these characters, they're all tech. They're tech guys. And what are they doing? Square Jupiter, square Uranus. They know something's up. They know something's coming. And this Sun Saturn conjunction, I think, is serious. So we're looking at about 6 days between now and the conjunction between the Sun Saturn, right? And I think right around that time is also when the moon goes into Scorpio, and then we have these oppositions happening with Jupiter and Uranus. I think that's a tricky time in terms of money. Just saying, a tricky time in terms of money. And then we have a leap day this month, 29th, every 4 years. Leap days are unusual. We're living in a leap year. We have an extra year. It's like having an extra finger. Now what do we have here? Let's see. We still have the sextiles going on with Neptune. That's going to change in a couple days. So we still have this energy that allows us to kind of creatively flow and get out of the way of the T square, right? And this is a strategy, if you want to think about it. How can you creatively extract yourself from what looks like a conflict that maybe you should never have been in the first place, but you have to get out of it? Find a creative way, find a creative solution. And I think it's easier to it's not, we're getting into a lot of pride here, right? Like that's kind of what I was dealing with last night, was a lot of pride. And like, oh, maybe I got too much pride invested in this. So this is, again, if you want to, we talk about saving face, or I've talked about it before. If you want to save face for yourself, do it. Find a creative way of doing it. It's really okay, right? Find a creative way. And maybe be funny or self-effacing. It's not terrible to make fun of yourself at times. In fact, that can actually be very healthy to make fun of yourself. Self-deprecation is a very good tool to have in your toolkit, right? Be self-deprecating. That means that you can poke fun at yourself. That's a creative way to get out of this kind of entanglement, this hard entanglement that we're dealing with. We do have this moon trine with the true node and with Chiron. So again, I think there's some validity here with that Chiron, especially Chiron. where you can again, you can admit your mistake. This is where I think the strength is today. Admit your mistake early, or at the very least, admit to yourself that you may have overcommitted. You don't have to admit to anybody else, but admit to yourself that you may have overcommitted, and then scale it back, dial it back, and see what you can learn from the situation. Because internally, that feels good. Now, sometimes, and this is, I'm just going to give you the extreme version of this. Sometimes you have to go to the mat. Sometimes you have to go to the mat. And maybe this is one of those days where you have to go to the mat. Maybe this is a ride or die day with emotions, right? Maybe this is it. And then you learn something through it. Maybe you become a standard bearer in a way that might be very uncomfortable. But that's the extreme end of this, right? The extreme version. And but just remember, if you're going to do that, make sure that it is something worth doing or worth experiencing that kind of extreme emotional investment. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go just a little off script today, but yesterday I was doing these memes on Twitter and they were kind of funny. Um, let me show some of these memes. I'm usually not a meme maker, but I thought I've seen all these astrologers get into memes, right? So let me see if I can do this. So we have this Venus Mars conjunction in Aquarius, and I looked up a number of celebrities who have Venus Mars conjunctions, and one of them was Richard Ramirez, right? The Hillside Strangler. That guy is the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. So I came up with this meme, which actually that was pretty funny. Hi there, I've got Venus and Mars in Aquarius. Want to get coffee sometime? I'm sorry, it made me laugh when I did it. So I went through a lot of these memes, and there was another one with Eddie Izzard, who has Venus and Mars in Aquarius, and I did one with Garth Brooks as his alter ego. What's his name? Gaines, Chris Gaines. God, Garth Brooks is weird. He's a weird dude. All right, I'll stop sharing that. All right, let's get into our True Hemp Science story of the day. Thank you for indulging me with my memes, or at least one of them. Today's True Hemp Science star of the day, when I was going through all the possibilities of who today's True Hemp Science star of the day was, a pun intended here. Let me get the banner up. There's the banner. Today's True Hemp Science star of the day was a slam dunk. Why? Because it's Julius Erving, Dr. J. Remember, True Hemp Science is your one-stop shop for all things CBD. And let me tell you, this is cutting-edge CBD. Chris is a freaking mad scientist. All you got to do is go to truehempscience.com, check out all their stuff. They've got topicals, they've got nano, they've got water emulsified, spagyrics, edibles, you name it, it's there. All you got to do is type in 15MINS, 15MINS, and you get a free goodie bag with your order of $100 or more. The goodie bag itself, if you were to parse it out, probably, I don't want to put a value on it, but it's valuable. I'm just saying it's valuable. $150 or more, you get free shipping. And there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you want to find out more about the product, there is a link on Chris's website where you can actually make an appointment and talk with him. So truehempscience.com is your one-stop shop for all things CBD. All right, let's talk about the doctor. Julius Erving, I don't know how many of you are sports fans, but when you watch a video of Julius Erving, going all the way back to when he was in the ABA, and even in the NBA, he was the nicest guy, right? He was always well-mannered. He always seemed to be very upbeat and positive. So Neptune is his ruler, right? He's a Pisces. By the way, Pisces make the best basketball players. I've made a case for this. They're the best basketball players because they're able to flow, right? And basketball is a game of flow. So it's clear to see with Libra on the ascendant and Neptune here, and then Dr. J's got Mars conjunct his ascendant. It's 3 degrees, but it's conjunct his ascendant. So he's a force, right? He's got all this going on, like Mars, Jupiter trine, Jupiter trine is ascendant, Jupiter in the 5th house, which is all about sports and pastimes. He is wired to be an athlete. If you want to see an athletic chart in action, it's Dr. J, right? But you always get his kindness. Like he did get into a few scuffles. Like he was not above getting into a scuffle. But when you watch him and he's interviewed, he's just really calm and really kind. But man, this guy was a force. He was really an absolute force when he played basketball. Now, he was in a movie called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. And it was a movie about a fictional basketball team called the Pittsburgh Pisces. And Dr. J was the star of the movie. Now, I don't know if they knew he was a Pisces or not. Maybe they did. But it's one of those archetypal kinds of moments for a player in biology where you see it. Oh, it's the Pittsburgh Pisces, and Dr. J is the Pisces. Now we got Steph Curry, who's also a Pisces, so we'll talk about at some point in the future. What's also interesting about Dr. J's chart is Uranus up here in the 9th house. And Uranus is disruptive. So, when Dr. J, there was a lot of weird stuff. He went to the University of Massachusetts, which for college is very different. Dr. J was at the playgrounds in New York City where they, all these legends would come out to play. Once Dr. J came out, all these guys stopped. Like, who is this guy? Right? He was different. He was just really different. All the local legends and NBA players, they came out to watch. There's videos of people that were like on rooftops just to watch him play. And he was a high school player at that time. And he could have gone to any college. And he winds up going to the University of Massachusetts, which is not a basketball power. So the 9th house represents college and higher learning. So he makes a very different kind of choice. And then his road to professional basketball is different, right? Like he goes into the ABA and not the NBA. He goes into the ABA, which is a very Uranian league. It's an upstart league. They have a 3-point line. They play with a red, white, and blue basketball. And the first team he plays for is the Virginia Squires. And they become legitimate overnight. And then eventually he winds up playing for the New York Nets, where they win 2 ABA titles. So Uranus, and so even when he decided to go into the NBA, he had a very weird path to the NBA as well. And I think the team that held his draft rights was the Atlanta Hawks, if I'm not mistaken. And then there was some weird thing that happened between, I believe, the Atlanta Hawks and the Philadelphia 76ers, and maybe the Milwaukee Bucks were involved too. Like, it was not a straight, like, he went to Atlanta and started working out with Pistol Pete Maravich. Could you imagine Dr. J and Pete Maravich being on the same team? But something was disrupted. Like, he was actually in Atlanta, in a Hawks uniform, and then all of a sudden something changed, right? There was something about his draft status and who held his rights, because these ABA players were now coming over. They were coming over to now. What's interesting is that the New Jersey Nets eventually migrate to the NBA, and had Dr. J stayed long enough, he would have just been a New Jersey Net, and he would have been on that team in the NBA, but it didn't happen. And to me, that's very Uranian, right? So there's this kind of disruption and chaos, and he's clearly, in terms of basketball, he is a disruptor. He's a new breed of player, right? Like in how when we look at basketball, Dr. J is sort of this kind of new breed, explosive, athletic, comes out of this sort of pirate league that is known for players that play very fast and loose with the ball and their lives. So he comes out of that, right? And by the time he gets to the NBA, he's good, but he's not as good as he was in the ABA. And eventually he finally gets a title with the 76ers, which is, I think, good for him. Right. Now, the other thing about Dr. J's chart, which is interesting, is his connection to his family. You see Cancer on the midheaven. And his brother, when Dr. J was in college in Massachusetts, his brother got real sick and was dying. So he would drive back and forth, literally from, UMass to New York, because that's where he was from, to help his brother, right, and to help his mother. If you know anything about his story with his brother, it's very, very touching. They were very close, and you can see this right with Cancer on the midheaven. I mean, just the connection to his family and family values, which is again very Cancerian. Venus and Mercury in the fourth house. Venus anchors some of those Cancerian values. So he's a very interesting character. Moon in Taurus, he makes a lot of money, right? He makes a lot of money. The other thing, this is interesting. For all of Dr. J's elevated. When I say elevated, yeah, his elevated play on the court, and he's kind of got like this very elevated spiritual vibe. That's Neptune on the ascendant, right? But there was this sports writer in Philadelphia who covered the 76ers, and she wanted to have an athletic kid, and she wound up having Julius Irving's baby, right? This is like a side thing and I think Dr. J was married at the time, and she winds up having his baby. And let me see if I can get her. I always forget this woman's name, but it's very moon in the eighth house, right? It's very moon-like in the eighth house. It's like, oh, her name is Alexandra something. Let me see if I can find her name. Um, where's the personal life? Hold on. Now I'm pot committed here. Early life, college career, professional, Philadelphia 76ers, retirement, legacy, slam dunk contest, dunk over Bill Walton, rock the baby, post basketball career. Okay. Let's see. It does not mention his Wikipedia is very kind to Dr. J's personal life. Usually there's like a personal life section on Wikipedia. And he doesn't really have that. Doesn't really have it. But anyway, he fathered this I think her name is Alexandra, something with children. The list is children. All right, hold on. I got to do this now. I'm sure Tom has already gone there in chat, but Alexandra Stevenson. That's Dr. J's daughter. And Samantha Stevenson was a sporter in Philadelphia. And she decided that she wanted to have an athletic baby. So she looked around and she said, Dr. J, you're my guy. You're my guy. So Alexandra Stevenson became a tennis player. She became a tennis player. And what's her Wikipedia? I think she might have won Wimbledon at one point. Let me see here. Let's see. Playing style. She's older now. Like she's kind of past her prime. She's born in 1980, so She's off the tennis circuit, right? But I think she had, uh, yeah, Wimbledon. I think she didn't she win Wimbledon? Um, let's see. Titles, mixed doubles, first round French Open. She got to the third round in Wimbledon, second round in the U.S. Open, second round Australia Open. So getting to the first round of the French Open is no easy feat. So Dr. J's daughter, Alexandra Stevenson, and getting back to Dr. J's chart, you can see it, right? You can see it in his chart. That little moon there in Taurus, little moon in Taurus, little inconjunct over here, right? With a little Mars action in conjunct with that moon. Um, and he's the kind of guy, again, he's got this grace about him. He played with grace on the basketball court, right? And even this whole thing with, Alexandra Stevenson and the sports writer mom, right? Kind of like just water flowing off his back when it came out. He's had done an amazing job of, excuse me, he's done an amazing job of not dealing with scandal in his career. And it says Neptune, right? And when you watch people with Libra rising, they're very polite. They're very kind. I've talked about this in terms of the strategy of Libra rising. And Dr. J cultivated that. He totally cultivated it. So he got a lot of that grace back, whether it was from sports writers or broadcasters or even other players. He was beloved by other players. And in his last All-Star game, who was somebody said it's Larry Bird. Yeah. We're going to make sure he goes out real well here. We're going to feed him the ball. Right. That's how much he was beloved by other players in the league. The money thing with Jay, with Jupiter Pluto opposition, he went through it with some of this contract stuff, ABA, NBA, right? But he's done incredibly well in terms of endorsements. There's no poverty in Dr. J's life. And True Note in Aries, right? He's a trailblazer. Well, he wasn't a trailblazer. That was Portland's team. He was a trailblazer. Like, he changed the game of basketball. That True Note in Aries, the sixth house, physical, right? A little bit of that Piscean flow in there. I'd be interested to understand, because there are some things I think about relationships in his life that are hidden from us, where, like, I'm sure that his home life, and even like the creation of the progeny of Alexandra Stevenson, right? South Node, 12th house, hidden from the rest of the world with Mars there. There may be a few skeletons in Dr. J's closet, but that's not how we want to view him or remember him. He's one of the greats. And there you go. Your True Hemp Science star of the day, Dr. J. Julius Irving. Okay, I am out of here. So I'm not going to be doing the 15-minute show because I have to go to the hospital today, and I'm pressed for time. So be aware of that, and I'll be back tomorrow over on the Friday forecast here on the 11th house. So we'll do something for the Friday forecast, but I can't make today's show. So anyway, thank you for being here. Have yourself a great Friday. I appreciate every single one of you. The Leo moon appreciates every single one of you, right? In my life. Wouldn't be able to do it without you. There'd be no reason for me to get up here and do this if you didn't show up. So thank you for doing that. Please hit like. Please hit subscribe, ring the bell. And if you feel like it, buy me a coffee. And don't forget to support our good friend at True Hemp Science. Take care. Bye for now.